Now we had a very thorough look at arrays and slices. For the moment, we're done with that, and I will change the main package here in lists go to lists instead, so that go run dot no longer executes that, and I'm fine with those yellow squiggly lines here, because now I'll add a maps go file where we will have a look at another key data structure available in Go. And I'll turn this into my main package and give that main function. And therefore, actually, I'll move the lists go file into a lists folder so that we don't have a clash here with multiple top-level files using different packages. So now we get this maps go file, and in here I want to dive into maps. So what are maps in Go? A map is a different kind of data structure which you can also use to group data together. It's a bit like a struct, but different. Now let me show you how a map looks like before we then explore how it's different from a struct. Let's say we want to store a bunch of website URLs here. So we have different companies, and those companies have websites. For this, we could add a websites variable. And of course, now we could create an array or a slice. So maybe a slice of websites where we have something like google.com and then also something like AWS.com for the Amazon Web Services. And then maybe a bunch of other URLs as well. This works, but saving those URLs like this could have a couple of disadvantages. For one, if someone looks at this code, or if we ever want to output this code somewhere, we just see the URLs. For some companies like google.com, it's clear to which company this URL belongs. But to understand that AWS belongs to the Amazon Web Services, it's important that you heard about that company and its abbreviation before, otherwise this doesn't tell you anything. So having an extra label here could make a lot of sense. Now, in addition to that, if you want to retrieve a URL, let's say you want to find Google's URL, you always need to memorize that Google is the first URL here so that you can retrieve it by index. Possible, but if you have a long list of URLs, this can get very cumbersome if you need to start counting those different URLs to find the right index. That's a problem a map can solve for us. We can create a map by using the special map keyword in Go. And then we have a special syntax here where we need to tell Go which kind of map it is. Because a map, like a struct, is a storage where you have values of a certain type and then keys that identify those values. So labels for those values. You have key value pairs, that's a map, just like a struct. I'll talk about the differences to a struct a little bit later. And since we have these two parts, key and value, we now need to define two parts when we tell Go how our map should look like. Because both the key and the value stored under a certain key can be of various value types. That's why we first of all add square brackets here, and between those square brackets, we let Go know which type of value will be used for our key. Very often that will be a string, but it could be anything. You could use some struct type there, so a pre-created or custom-built struct, or an integer, whichever key makes sense to you. Now here I'll start with a string. And then directly after the square brackets, without any blank or anything like that, you now set the value type. So the data type used for the values stored under certain keys. And here that will again be a string, because my URLs, which I want to store, will be strings. So in this case, both the keys and the values will be of type string, but that's not a must-have. You can have different types, and you can use all kinds of types for the key, and you can use all kinds of types for the value. Now, again, without a blank, you can add curly braces here. And this now finishes the creation of a map, though you can also initialize it with some default key value pairs, but you don't have to. You can also create an empty map, which is what this would do. But you can now also set some key value pairs, typically in a new line for better readability. And now here, since I made it clear that my keys will be strings, we need double quotes here to create such a key string. And that could be Google. And then you add a colon, just as you do it in structs, and you set the value for that key, which in this case could be https://google.com. And then, separated by a comma, I can also add Amazon Web Services and then set my URL here, like that. And add a comma to make it clear that this is part of that overall map, and we have a line break thereafter. And this is now a map with two default key value pairs. Now we can, of course, as always, use the format package to print that map and see what that gives us if we print websites. By the way, as soon as you save, this code gets auto-formatted, and Go ensures that this is lined up such that it's a bit easier to read. Now, if you run that code, you will see that this map is being printed here in one line, but it is this map.